Okay.
This is what I'm saying, I'm doing it.
Okay. First of all, I want to welcome everybody. I know it's Friday and before break, and it's tough to be here, but I want to talk this morning about, we're going to talk about biology EOC, but I want to share with you some information that I gleaned from my last course, which I created a school improvement action plan for our biology EOC scores. The course that I'm in right now, I've created an action plan for Algebra 1. And I looked at all this. I'll explain to you kind of how I did it. So this morning, kind of go around the room, introduce yourself. Ms. Barton, you want to start?
Jerry Martin. I'm sorry.
Tyler Henderson.
Okay. So I want to start with our vision. Of course, as a campus and as a district, two of our main priorities, of course, are going to be student in school improvement, coupled with student achievement. And if we look at our vision, we're a group of stakeholders working to establish an educational setting where both students and educators can develop and progress and excel collectively. This entails creating a culture of recognizing and addressing inequalities that we may see in our classrooms, appreciating differences in our students, and fostering a feeling of inclusivity for all stakeholders involved. One of the things that I've mentioned and I've really been thinking about is getting students more involved in what we're teaching and how we're teaching it, and I think that's important. The data that we've got, we're a data-rich district. Every year at the end of the year, we get what we call as the TAPER, which is the Texas Assessment of Progress and rating system that we get for our campus. Couple that with all the data we collect from benchmarks and progress checks and formative assessments that we do in our classroom. We've got tons and tons of data. I sat down and looked at the TAPER report. I looked at all of our attendance data. I looked at our discipline data. And I tried to triangulate kids that were needing help not only with discipline, but academics, with attendance. And you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that our kids that struggle the most on the biology EOC are the kids that are absent the most, and they're the kids that are in ISS the most, and they're the kids that get off-campus referrals or receive off-campus suspension the most. So for our kids, not every kid is created equal in our classrooms. Our campus, I did an equity audit. I looked at demographics. I looked at that with achievement. And what we discovered, of course, is probably not going to surprise you. Our two lowest performing groups on our campus, our African American students, our Hispanic students, those are our two lowest performing. I will tell you this, I looked at this year's data, and if you look at our progress checks and we look at our benchmarks, for my classes, it's kind of a flip, my lowest performing group are my white students.
It's the same for me.
And now in that, that's kind of a paradigm flip, because what we've seen in the past is our Hispanic students and our African American students. But my students with the high scores this year are my mixed or two-race students, and my African American students, and my Hispanic students. It's my white students that I'm struggling with more and more and more, and I don't know why. That's something that maybe you guys we can talk about, but it's something that's kind of unique. Area of improvement, kind of hard for us to improve when you're already at 94, 95%. Of course, we'd like to hit 100%, but if we look at our test scores, our kids are doing fairly well. Of course, if we can target that 4% or that 6% that's not where we want them to be, we can improve scores across the campus. So I came up with a SMART goal to improve biology EOC scores by the year 2026. And putting some things in place. And a couple of things that I think we should put in place are some strategies. And I did some research and found quite a few peer-reviewed articles on the use of concept maps in the classroom. Just thinking about our last unit with body systems, if we could have included some thinking maps in there where the kids had to tie together the different systems. And I know body systems, for me, body systems just felt like it was blah. We just ran so fast, gave them the notes, here are your notes, you got 3 days to get the notes done, we got to cover 12 systems, and then boom, we tested. And it doesn't seem like we gave the kids much time to interact with. And then phenomena-based instruction. I mean, I was a big, when I first heard this, I was like, okay, yeah, that's great and all. And then I started to do some research on it and discovered how student scores really start to improve when you start using phenomena in the classroom. I looked at studies that came out of Africa, I looked at studies that came out of schools in Taiwan, in Japan, in Central Europe, and found that phenomena-based instruction is not only is it part of the national NGSS, so the new science, next generation science standards, but if you look at our SAVIS curriculum, of course, a lot of stuff is phenomena-based. So one of the things I want to do this morning, once we kind of get through some data, is I want to start to make a list of phenomena. Kelly and I had a conversation this week about our evolution unit. We use a tremendous amount of phenomena during our evolution unit. We look first at cell phone evolution, then we look at MRSA evolution, then we start looking at things like homologous. We looked at we do a pepper moth lab, which is a phenomena-based lab. We look at structures like homologous structures and analogous structures. We do DNA analysis where they look at protein sequences. There's so much that we do in our evolution lab that helps the kids tie that information together, which I think is one of the reasons why our evolution unit is one of the most highest. Our kids do better on evolution than we do in almost any other unit that we have.
Yeah, that's not nice.
If you look at our benchmark score or our progress check scores, they were extremely high. If you look at what we do, I think incorporating more and more of those phenomena is going to help our kids. Keeping track of data, like I said, we're a data-rich district. We get so much data from our kids that we collect it. And I know we got a big push right now for them to get data from us downtown. But one of the things I think is important, I don't think downtown needs the data as much as we do. And the data that they're getting downtown, we're never getting feedback on. No one ever comes and tells us, which I think this would be the DIS's job, would be to sit down and analyze that data, then come back and say, hey, in this unit, on this topic, you guys didn't hit the mark. But we don't ever get that. So we're kind of in charge of collecting that data and analyzing it on our own. And I think that's something that we need to do a little bit more of in the future. And again, I want to go back to the fact that we don't need to design our assessments, which I think is tragic, because we need to be designing those assessments and putting those things together. Teachers need to be involved in that process in order for the data to be valid for you and I. So I want to look first, I'm not going to read you that quote, but I want to look first at progress check data from unit, progress check 9. If y'all will pull up your progress check 9, let's see if it's still available. I want to look at it first. Let me see. Is it in there? Or is saying to make it available? Progress check 9. There it is right there. Let's look at it.
Yeah, I see it, so.
And I share this with my kids. Every time I give a progress check, every time I give a benchmark, I share this with the kids. I show them the district average. I show them how many students approached standard. I show them how many kids met standard, and then I show them how many mastered. And then I also show them our campus data. I show them the same thing. So if we look at progress check 9, the district average on the test, 2,400 students took the test, 67% was our average score. 74% of the kids approached standard, about 54% of the kids met standard, so only about half, with about 25% mastering the test. If we look at Harker Heights High School, our campus average was around 69, with about 75% approaching, with about 54 meeting, which is almost right in line with the district, which is rare for us, because I don't know if you do this at the end of every progress check, but normally our campus is 10 to 12 points above what the district is. And this time around, we were right on what the district was. And we're really interested to go back and look at some test questions to see. Yeah, Kelly.
But aren't the other schools giving it as homework?
Some of the other schools are giving it as homework. Some of them are giving it as they're taking a formative grade on it. They don't take summative grades on it. I personally think our campus may be the only campus in the district that's really taken the progress checks and as seriously, because you and I, we know that at the end of the year, our kids have to take the EOC, so we have to give them some kind of assessment that's a real assessment. But again, I just don't think whoever's creating these assessments downtown is doing a good job for us.
Yeah, but it's hard to compare us with the rest of the district, and the rest of the district doesn't use it like we do.
No, that's right, you're comparing apples and oranges. If we go in and look at, let me pull up. where do we go, student individual responses, I think, right?
Yeah.
You pull up in student individual responses, and then you can see, the data here. I kinda wanna go through and look at what you and I would consider to be one of the most missed questions. I don't know, if somebody pull up theirs, can you pull up yours, it looks like mine? And so
Yeah.
we can see if my number 10 is the same as your number 10.
If you go to item analysis, it'll tell you the percentage of
Yeah.
students who got it correct.
Item
So-
analysis.
You can just click on the,
Item analysis goes by the question, there you go.
you
There
also
we
just
go.
click the question and see.
There we go.
Or is that all of
So, let's see if this is all listed, right?
Yeah, that's it,
That's all of the students, that's not just some of them. It's not even-
that's here at Harper Heights.
That's here at Harper Heights High School, that's what I wanna see, that's what I wanna look at. So if we look at most missed question, what do we think?
14,
Which one?
14, 12,
Yeah,
14,
12 and 14, yeah.
12,
And, 3.
3.
and 3. Let's pull those up. 14, 12, and
3 and 6.
3. 14, 12.
Yeah, 6 is pretty close too.
So 14, 12, and 3?
Yeah,
3 and 6.
those are the lowest.
Let's look at 3. So 3, this is question 3. Is this what everybody else has for question 3? I'm hoping.
Let me see, hold on.
Dr. Dubois and I did this the other day, and what we noticed was that every time I tried to pull it up, he pulled it, we got different
My
questions.
number 3 is different.
My number 3 is the same, and I'm looking at the one in Schoology, the one that she
What?
posted.
Yeah.
Mine talks about the hagfish. I'm
Okay.
in the same test.
Is yours the same too?
Well, I'm looking at the one that was in,
You're looking at the one in Schoology?
Yeah.
Is it this question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, by sending signals that stimulate the release of hormones, the brain controls the cycle of digestion, including process and nutrient absorption. The brain initiates the release of these hormones at certain times of the day. Based on this information, what two body systems most directly regulate the digestive system? What do we see up here that's, what's causing the kids not to get this question right?
Well,
I mean, for you and I, we look at it, we go right away, okay?
they might see brain and think nervous.
Well, here's another thing, is it just part A that they're missing, or is it part?
That's what we're gonna look at here. So based on the information, which two body systems most directly regulate digestive system? So,
I think most of them got this part right, it was the second part. Is it-
Well,
but your multiple choice is different than mine.
you
So
mean,
it says A and B.
oh, it's scrambled.
Yeah.
So everybody's is scrambled.
Yeah, I don't have a correct
So,
response.
my correct response would be A, but it's C on.
So, but what, best answer choice here is which one? Independent nervous system? Brain's involved,
Yeah.
hormones are involved. Keywords, hormones and brain. I don't know why kids couldn't put this together.
Well, they may have gotten this part right.
They may have got this part right, but let's look at, and I think for this question, probably the second part is the trickiest one, because they have to pick out the statement that best supports part A.
Yeah.
Signals are sent to glands that release chemicals into the blood, leading to increased absorption of nutrients. Signals are sent to reduce the intake of oxygen so that nutrients can be readily absorbed. Signals increase muscle contractions, reducing water in the body to improve absorption of nutrients. And signals open pores in the skin so that excess water can be released, making room for the increased
Yeah,
nutrients.
because if you read this right here, it should tell you that the nervous system is involved. So I think there's only one question or one answer up above that actually goes over the nervous system. So they probably got part A right.
Yeah, right. It's probably this part of the question that screwed everybody up.
Yeah.
Or that gave them the most challenge.
Yeah.
Good question? Is it a good question? Part A,
Part A was a good.
part B is a little misleading. Do you think?
Yeah, because we also can spend a ton of time going over the interactions.
Right. We did
Because we had so little time.
so little time to cover it, to put it all together.
We did that one.
So I really don't have a problem with this question, except for the second part.
Yeah.
But it's not respiratory system.
Yeah, I feel like
It's not,
Well, they're probably not super familiar with the endocrine system because most of the other systems
No,
they've
yeah.
seen
yeah,
multiple
they're,
times.
they're not.
Yeah. and the
It's not integumentary system.
And it's not the.
I think a question like this boils down to, did we give them enough experience with each one of the systems to be able to ferret out information like you see in this
I don't know
question.
about you guys, but I felt very rushed, so.
I was very rushed.
I
It
didn't
was
get it.
ridiculous.
I would have loved to have had time for the kids to build a concept map, tying all the systems together to the circulatory system. If we focus with circulatory system and then tie the digestive system to it, and tie the muscular system to it, and tie the.
We
and
only
try
had
to-
one formative assessment over this,
Yes.
this whole
to
concept.
try to make that connection. All right, what's the next question that we're looking at?
12?
It's 3, 6, I think.
Oh, yeah, 6 also has a low score.
3, 6, 12, 14.
3, 6. Let's see if this is the same number 6. Just the thyroid question. Now see, it shows up as number 6 on the list, but look, it shows up as number 3 right here.
Yeah.
Is this your number 6?
I'm checking right now.
I'm looking right now.
So my number 6.
Yes, that's what I got.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So this is the thyroid gland question, and what is the question they're asked to do? What is the thing they want us to do?
Which two systems produce T3 and T4?
Which animals, okay. Which animal systems interact to produce and deliver T3 and T4? Okay, so I don't think this is a difficult question
There's a lot to read.
because this is what I tell my kids, and this is my strategy. Don't read all of this until you've read the sentence with the question mark. Because if I read this, and I'm thinking to produce and deliver, I'm thinking circulatory system already.
Yeah.
I don't even have to read all this. So I'm already thinking circulatory system and hormones.
Well, they have to read it to know.
They have to read that to know the T3 and T4 hormones.
Thyroid, we talked about as being a part of the immune system,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
not that they were.
Right. But as soon as they saw thyroid gland,
But what
They
else
should
do we
put that
talk about
together.
that produces much of anything?
Right,
You know, there's
right.
very few systems.
so I don't think this was a difficult question, but you hit on something. How many of our kids, especially regular ed
They
kids,
just gloss over
when
it.
they saw all of this and they started to see T3 and T4 and then they saw these 3 paragraphs, they were like, oh, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And they just gave up.
Yeah.
One of the things that we know, that, we heard at the lead teacher meeting the other day from Sandra, you take that, we bring this off, was that the new test that's coming out, next year's test, there will not be questions where they have long passages to read. That's going away.
Oh, is it
There
really?
are no, there are no reading passages are a thing of the past. Now, do our kids not need to read when they graduate from high school? Well, no, that's not necessarily true, but.
But this doesn't necessarily
This
gauge
is-
their scientific skills.
No, it doesn't. And this is and you and I know some of your regular ed kids, because some of those kids are inclusion kids, some of those kids are gonna struggle with reading. They're not gonna read this, they're just gonna guess. So maybe this one was just a guess question. Which other one do we want to look at?
14.
12.
12.
12 and 12.
Yeah, they only actually needed to get one system right on this question anyway.
To get the right answer?
Well, circulatory isn't, I guess circulatory is
Yeah,
greater than.
this
Is that
one
this one?
this one shouldn't have been the one that they missed.
We only had 3, well, I gave my kids in the notes, we added hydrotropism. Cause I remember they had they tested that like 2 years ago. There was a question with the root showing it growing down and it was hydrotropism. So I added that to my notes, but we give them thigmo, photo, and gravitropism.
Yeah, it's just a vocab question.
This is just a vocabulary word. I don't think this was a difficult question.
They should have.
As soon as they read coiling around an object, touching an object, they should have picked up on thigmotropism. But again,
Even if they didn't, they didn't.
I'm guilty, I did not teach this. I let my kids go out and get that information, let them gather the notes, then I had them do the tropism interactivity.
Yeah.
So if they didn't go do the interactivity, they didn't have any experience with the tropisms.
I haven't been here actually.
That's
That's
good.
a topic.
But I did not talk about it at all. I did not.
Well, at least when I do vocab, I usually, especially words like this I just break it down, like hydro, grabba,
Yeah.
photo, you should be able to pick those out. So even if you don't know the answer, you should know hydro, grabba, and photo.
And you know that there's also geotropism. Sometimes they trade that with geotropism. So I mentioned it in class. I was saying, okay, remember the four tropisms we talked about? And then we kind of glazed it over. But if my kids didn't do the interactivities, then they didn't get this one.
Here's a question.
What's that?
maybe next year to include with the vocabulary terms, maybe we should do some prefix stuff like root words.
That's what I do with my AP kids at the beginning of the year.
I mean, I do it with my kids throughout the year, so that they have an understanding, but it's not something I force them so much.
Maybe that's
right
something
now.
that we think about doing, just to start that vocabulary at the beginning of the year.
Well, we already know we're mostly an English class.
It's a vocabulary class. It's a language class. All right, what's the next one?
14. 14 wasn't the last question.
It was the last one that you got asked.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, no, I went through this one a lot. And the kids.
This is also really just a vocab question.
A lot of students probably thought ribosomes just because.
We compared bacteria cells with prokaryotes.
But we did that, now I did I'm sure y'all did too, I'm sure you did the Venn diagram with your kids. These were in, well, this was in the Venn diagram, this is the Venn diagram, this is in the Venn diagram. And it's just one of those things, they just have to know and that's kind of difficult to take out because I know the kids start thinking of all the other things that cells have, and the last thing they think about is that protein being a commonality between viruses and cells.
I know some.
But we gotta do a little better job on, again, giving them more time with the material. Cause it felt like viruses and bacteria were just a rush.
It was.
It was one day.
Yeah, it was.
Literally, it was one day. And the next day, we did the Venn diagram, we did the notes one day, Venn diagram the next day. We gotta build
You
it.
knows me, I did 10 minutes of this.
Yeah.
And so, I know at the beginning of this school year, we lost how many weeks?
Three.
Well, three to four to begin with, and then we had to go back and reteach, which took up
We
another,
lost like 9 weeks.
it was almost like, it was literally almost 9 weeks.
9 weeks.
So we've been behind the 8 ball ever since the semester, the campus, school
I
started.
don't think they should have missed this.
I don't think they should have missed it, but
No.
again, if you don't give them enough experience
Yeah.
manipulating, reading, and
They
thinking
have enough
about,
time to soak it all in.
Right, and here's the thing, some of the kids read it and they're like, this question has to be a little bit more difficult than what it is.
right.
And they'll overthink it, and I have a lot of students who did that,
So is that the 5 most missed questions on the progress check?
Almost.
foremost,
What's the last one? Was there one more that was the most missed, you think?
something above 64%.
Which one was
at
that?
69, right?
Yeah, there's
7.
a 65, question 1.
Question 1? Right, let's look at it real quick. No, that's the feedback.
Mhm.
This is a lead forward question. My kids had already seen this because I'd already pulled it and used it. And my kids were really quick to note when we talked about it in class. Well, Mr. Jacques, when I saw gland, I thought endocrine. When I saw bones, I thought
We
skeletal.
don't even talk
Yeah, we don't
about
even
the
talk about
skeletal
skeletal.
system though.
But they all
Yeah.
caught on to that. They thought immediately. So they immediately started to jump into endocrine system, skeletal system. Then they looked at circulatory system, the blood,
Yeah.
calcium. They knew bones were made out of calcium, so they said, well, that's gotta be
We
skeletal
also,
system.
at least when I was doing formative assessments for this, I did not go into this many systems interacting. I limited it to 2. So
Yeah.
this was more
Kidneys.
more rigorous.
Excretory,
Here's the thing, like I try to tell my kids, to get your answers, cross out the ones you know.
cross out the one.
There's no reproductive,
Yes.
there's no skin, so integumentary.
Right, so you can get rid of, we can get rid of this answer choice right away, and we can get rid of this one right away.
Yeah.
So you get rid of A and B right away,
And
and
then,
then we're down to,
It's not talking about oxygen.
and it's not respiratory,
right,
so it's gotta be endocrine, those are your glands, your digestion, your excretory, there's your kidneys, and then your skeletal, there's your bones and your calcium.
I'm kind of annoyed at this question because skeletal was not in any of the notes that we did.
No,
So perhaps the kids thought that wasn't the right answer because we didn't talk about skeletal. It
Right.
wasn't in the notes. I mean, that's one of the things I
yeah,
hit on. If you haven't read it, it's not the right answer.
right,
Right.
right.
So,
or if we have.
Maybe we need to add skeletal to our,
Notes for next
notes
year.
for next year, just to have it. I mean, mine were real quick to point out, well, Mr. Jackson said bones right here. So when I saw that, I knew skeletal system, but we did this question before the test because it was a leap forward question, so we kind of broke this down, and I had them write out, we wrote out, I had to kick them up on the board, write down, as the kids were calling it out, all the systems that we saw, and then we looked at our answer choices. But, you know, like you said, and this is what I tell my AP kids for sure, when you're taking a multiple choice test, a lot of times it's easier to pick out the answers that you know are wrong. Get rid of the ones you know are wrong first. Because if I get rid of 50% of my answers because they're wrong, now I've got a 50-50 shot even if I have to guess.
Yeah, that's what.
Even if I have to guess. All right, let's look at the benchmark, because that's the one that I really got some questions there, because I wanna make sure that I'm not seeing things that, I'm not missing something, because there were just some questions on there that were just not good questions at all. Where's the benchmark? There it is. Let's pull that up. Let's look at the district data. So district data on the benchmark, 2,100 students have taken it, percent scores of 59.9, so 60.
Atrocious.
62 approaches standard, 39% meet standard, 12%. I will share with you this, when I looked at Algebra 1 scores, you guys would just, your jaw would just drop. When we look at Algebra 1, approaches on most of their benchmarks are around 30%. Meets is around 5%. Masters, unheard of. So when I saw that, I'm thinking to myself, who's making this test? There is a huge disconnect between the test maker and what's being taught. Here, ours is a little better. Now let's look at Parker Heights High School. Parker Heights High School, 67%, 73% approaching, 53% meet standard, and then 23% mastering. So
Okay,
have to go
so
back.
how much higher would that have been if we had already taught the last?
If we'd already
unit,
taught the
we
last
had
unit, which this was, ecology was tested in this thing,
Yeah.
in this
And my
group.
kids are asking questions about it, and I'm like,
Kids are asking questions and we can't, you know,
we're not supposed to be like, hey, it's this answer.
yeah. I just told my kids to think it through,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of them, I know with, well, we'll get there, let's look at the question.
We're almost 8% above that.
Y'all tell me which questions are the most missed.
Is that the whole district or is that just
6. I got that, sorry.
Hang on.
4 is 33.
There's E.
5 is 48%.
I was gonna say 4 and 5.
9 is 29.
You wanna start with the lowest one? Y'all find the lowest one first.
I think
29 is number 9.
Which question is that, 9?
Number 9.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at it. Oh, yes, yes, oh my gosh, worst question ever.
Oh
My kids were so frustrated because they were reading it, they kept reading it over and over and over again. Y'all tell me, you look at it, you tell me what you think is the correct answer.
Okay, so what I told the students was to go back to the notes and look at, what the macromolecule does. Because then I think they can find the correct answer doing that.
Use 2 fingers and bring them together.
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
You gotta be over the answers, scroll through them.
Okay, so let's look at the first answer choice. Carbohydrates provide structural support. Well, cellulose,
Yeah.
chitin. Proteins used for immune system for self-identification.
Well, it's.
Glycoproteins.
Yeah.
Nucleic acids help transport. No, nucleic acids are not involved in transport.
Isn't that the correct answer?
Well, let's look. Let's look at the next one.
Mhm.
Carbohydrates used for immune system identification. Glyco, that's carbohydrates. So
Yes,
glycolipids, glycoproteins all have carbohydrates. Proteins help transport substances in and out of the membrane. Lipids provide structural support
Cell membrane.
for the cell membrane.
Yeah.
This is what I told my kids was the answer. When they came to me and they asked me. Now look at the other ones. Carbohydrates regulate transport. Do they? Do sugars regulate transport? I said no.
No.
Protein store energy?
No.
No.
We don't know.
Lipids for identification? Well, glycolipids,
Yeah,
okay.
some of
yeah,
them.
I can see that. And then this last one, carbohydrates provide energy. That's when my kids jumped on that one, because that was the first one, right? Proteins help transport, oh yeah, they love that one. And then they got this one, nucleic acids help break down substances. No. So I see three definite answers, and if I really stretch this, this is the answer. But that's kind of a stretch. lipids, structural?
I assume they're talking about the phospholipid bilayer?
They have to be, that's the only thing they could be talking about. I don't think this is a good question, I'm sorry, I just don't like it. I think it's confused the kids.
Well,
Okay,
Or
so,
we gotta do a better job of when we teach this, that teach them that the lipid bilayer is a structural component of the cell membrane. Unless you said that,
I don't remember talking about the carbohydrate used by the immune system for self-identification in the cell membrane. I don't remember talking about it like that.
you mean glycolipids and glycoproteins?
I don't remember breaking it down by talking about it being used by the immune system.
Okay, yeah,
That's
yeah.
how it's
Yeah,
phrased.
because-
That's how it's phrased, yeah. It's how it's phrased, I mean, it's just, this is.
If
a-
they had just said it's how.
I just don't
cells
like this question at all, I
The
think she
way
made a terrible
acids
choice.
transports or transfers information.
Right,
So I can see why that one would be
but a
considered.
substance, it's not transporting a substance. It is carrying information.
It is.
But it's not, when I think of transporting a substance, I'm thinking of transport proteins in the cell membrane
But
moving.
it's
things.
technically a substance, so I get her
Yes.
point.
It's just, that.
But again, I think both of these are stretches, even if you try to make them work, they're both stretches. This was a question I told my kids, horrible question, I just didn't think it was a very good question at
I
all.
wish we could just remove that question.
And how many people got that right?
Give me another
20,
one. 5?
27%?
5?
4,
We did 4.
4 is,
No, 4 is 33%.
4 is 33%.
Okay, I thought we did that.
One quarter of students had that.
Oh, that's this one. Oh my gosh. Well,
This one they should have.
the kids have already seen this.
Yeah.
This was a lead forward question, and most of mine immediately jumped to, well, this is going low to high, so this has to be energy, needs energy. This one has to require energy. This kind of trips them up,
Because it's in and out.
because it's just in and out, it's just free flow. And then this one, diffusion from high to low. Answer is 3 only.
Yeah. How'd they get this one wrong? This
I
one
know,
looks easy
this
to me.
one was easy, I think.
They just haven't, well,
Maybe-
here's how they
maybe
got it wrong.
maybe-
We haven't covered this since the first 9 weeks.
Yeah, you're not wrong. How does 2 confuse them? Can you explain?
How does 2 confuse them?
Yes.
It just, the 2 arrows going back and forth. They don't see an area of high concentration or area of low concentration, because there's 4 particles on each side of the membrane.
Right.
So there's no high, no low.
So they just
But
don't
it's just
remember
simple,
isotope?
they just didn't put it together.
Okay.
Now, if you went to your answer choices and you went, okay, well, it can't be 1 and 3, because 1 doesn't need energy. It can't be 1 and 2, because 1 doesn't need energy. 2 only? And we know this one's right.
What was the second most picked answer?
Look and see what the most selected answer was.
On number 4,
Yeah, what was the most selected answer?
well, it's a tie between A and D.
So 2 only,
So,
and those are the 2.
they must have seen the arrow pointing out and thought, or the arrow pointing in and thought, oh, or maybe they thought both arrows meant that there had to be energy being used, they
Yeah.
just didn't remember isotonic.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I mean, we are gonna get to go over everything before
Right.
the start does.
Right. What's the next one?
It's 47% at number 21.
21. Yep. Got a lot of red on this one. Large population of rock pocket mass with various fur colors live in a designated area. Soon after a volcanic eruption, the number of mice with dark colored fur in the population increased. The best statement describes the reason for the change in the fur color.
I assume the correct answer is B.
Yes. Yes.
What's in,
I don't really know how they get confused on this.
I think the word fitness.
I think the word
Yeah.
fitness,
That must be.
unless you've been using that word reproductive
Survival,
fitness, differential fitness, unless you're using that term, the kids just, they think fitness, they think push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, that's what they think. I've told the kids, unless it says something specifically, we can't assume that it's a mutation.
What's the,
There's 2 with mutations in
Yes, and there's 2 of them up here with mutations. And then the fact that one of them started feeding in the daytime and one, no, that's probably not.
stimulate the release of pigment.
That's not even a thought. So I think this one was like Kelly said, I think maybe this is just the word fitness is what screwed them up.
Yeah, that's probably.
Because the fitness of, well, the dark colored mice increased and they became more abundant, we should have caught on to that. I don't, part of me goes, well, was this a good question? Or Was it just one, was it just one word in there? that
We
you-
probably weren't using the word fitness enough.
We probably were. We probably were. All right, what about another? Give me another.
5,
Did we just do that?
I think we did 5.
now the number 5 showed up there, but we were working on 4.
This one? Let's see. Oh, gosh. Another one. Terrible,
This
terrible.
one was rough.
This is so confusing. Or it was for me when I read it. I looked at this and I went, what? What's correctly describes the lytic and lysogenic cycles? Now, weren't we told by our VIS, I know she told me this in a meeting, you do not teach lytic and lysogenic
Yes.
cycles anymore.
And then we.
Life cycles, they only need to know the structures of the virus. They don't need to know
Well, I went over it anyway.
I did too. No, we did lytic and we did lysogenic. So what's my best answer? A lytic virus, bacteriophage,
It's not that one.
inserts its viral DNA, it's not that one.
No,
Bacteriophage bursts and releases virus particles.
no, bacteriophage shouldn't do
Nope,
that.
cell bursts. Bacteriophage injects its genome in the host cell. Nope.
That's the last one.
Bacteriophage reproduces inside a host cell and releases
I think there's
bacteriophages
too
in the
much
host
to
cell first.
read.
And
And then just
bacteriophage
read it.
inserts its viral genome in it. So,
So,
did we use the word bacteriophage enough?
I tried to, but.
Yeah, I used it a few
did I?
times.
I don't know, but I think the part that they probably might have messed up on is the bacteriophage burst and release, and they didn't finish it and just to read viral particles. They probably went in there very much viruses.
Yeah, bacteriophage
Yes.
must be,
A host
Yeah,
cell
when they read this,
inserts
because
genome.
we talked about
Yes.
burst and release, I did talk about that. But I
It's
said
not-
the cell, I said your cell bursts and release, and I think we're pretty clear. I just think this was a overuse of the word bacteriophage, number
Yes.
one.
probably should have used a different virus.
The virus inserts its viral genome in it. If you put that, I venture a guess 50% of these kids that missed this would have got it right.
Yeah.
If you just changed the word bacteriophage to virus.
Well, bacteriophage is, in my opinion, chosen to be intentionally
Mhm.
confusing.
It is,
Yes.
right, absolutely it is.
You have to understand that a bacteriophage is not the same thing as a bacteria cell.
Well,
I told y'all that when I went to Austin one time and helped build the EOC and went to Pearson and worked. And they put 16 biology teachers from all over the state in one room, took our cell phones, took our wallets when we went in there, locked the door, and they gave us 500 questions and they said, here, build the 2018 or 2017 EOC. 8 of the teachers in the room wanted to make questions so difficult that no kid could answer it. And then 8 of the teachers in the room wanted to make it so easy that every kid could answer it. And coming up with and I think this is one of those questions where people intentionally put something on it, put the vocabulary on it that the kids can't get. Which one? What's the next one?
13.
13. That's the- Yep, this one's got a lot of red on it. Oh, this is another one. Student makes a model to compare the process of transcription and
We
translation.
haven't even covered that since last
no,
semester.
but the
Yeah, it's
way,
been a long time.
but the way that.
But the
they-
way it's asked.
It's awful.
So the customer makes a copy of a grocery list at home. Transcription?
Well, hold on, because the question is the dumb part.
Right. Based on the student's model and your knowledge of the biological processes, which person or object represents tRNA?
So not only do you have to remember tRNA is about transport, but you have to remember where in the process it happens, and then you have to connect that
To a abstract, some kind of other
Yes.
abstract. So
I don't know.
this is what my kids, when they started seeing this, I'll just tell you all flat out, I popped this up on the board,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't give them the answer, but we walked through. I told them, okay, if you make a copy, where in protein synthesis do we make copies?
right?
Transcription, okay. So we copied our grocery list, that's the transcription piece. Then you drive that grocery list to the grocery store. What would be the grocery store? Ribosome. Okay, we're gonna take the list to the ribosome. All right, so now we took the list to the ribosome. Customer gives the grocery list to the cashier at the store. So who's the cashier? That's the ribosome itself, right?
But you don't do that.
No, you don't. No, you don't do that. I know,
And-
none of this is, you have to suspend reality in order
And,
to
and,
make this
and
question.
not only
work.
that, you're not talking about just where things move, but each individual component of the sentence also represents something. The customer
Right.
makes, like,
Right.
what is that in this?
The shopper picks up the items and brings them to the cashier, and then the cashier assembles the order and a shopping cart with the order is
Okay,
produced.
so the customer gives the grocery list to the cashier at the store. On honestly, no one does that. That does not make sense to me.
Right.
In my brain, this is where I'm getting confused.
Right.
I don't hate this question, but this should be something that's like, we apply like differentiated to like help them reach the mastery level, not.
We did the little slip of paper that goes in their notes,
Yes.
where they start with the construction,
Right.
construction building. They take the, we didn't do that this year. They take the plans, the construction worker carries the plans to the field, they assemble the parts.
That would be a better question.
That would be
This
a
is
better
terrible.
question than this. So what is the best answer?
Which person or object represents TRNA?
It's gotta be the shopper, right?
Yeah,
Shopper is TRN.
because they're the things that are.
Is
picking
that-
things up,
the
they're
items and
moving
delivers
them
it back to the-
They're moving into the ribosome.
That's gotta be the best answer.
So would the shopping cart be the protein?
The cashier assembles the order and a shopping cart with the order is
So
produced.
I assume is the shopping cart meant to be,
The protein,
yeah, I guess.
the
This
protein.
is,
Okay, yeah, I agree.
I
agree
think
with
the
Kelly.
kids
That's
missed
dumb.
this,
That's
not because they didn't know what TRNA did, because they all should know TRNA's transfer.
right.
But
That's the question.
it's the way the question's written.
This is awful.
Is this a transfer when I carry this to this?
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of ifs in this question. I just think it was a terrible.
Yeah,
I think
that's
it
actually a
was
good point.
I think it was just a bad question. I just think,
Because you could also think of the shopping cart bringing the amino acids to the cashier.
and
that being a
I can
transfer.
see Sandra picking this because this is an analogy, and we're you're asking the kids to transfer their knowledge of gene expression to this, but I don't think Sandra knows enough biology to really look at this and go, what's going on here, you know? I don't think she does. How much time we got, ladies?
3 minutes.
All right, let's look, one more, what else? Give me another one.
Yeah.
Do we do 13? I, do we look at 13?
Yeah, look.
Number 13, we just looked at. Okay. That would be the one that says 58,
Yeah.
which is 7?
Question 7,
Oh, wait, no, 22.
22. 22.
I hate having to look at questions.
Too many tabs to flip through.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't like this one either. I didn't like
This
it.
is a lead forward question.
I know it is,
Okay.
but
This is an ecology question.
No, it's not.
this is an evolution question. This is a gene flow question.
Okay, so,
So you know your answer has to be gene flow, correct?
well, no, what I did was you looked at it backwards, because if you look at it, you're making hybrids and it has more genetic variation
Right.
and more reproductive success. So what I told the students was, look at what the effect was, and you can automatically cross off 2,
You can get rid of 2 right away.
right?
So we know it had to be increased genetic variation,
So it,
and we know it can't be artificial.
right.
Yeah.
But you're looking at the event of them introducing a female.
And it's not a habitat loss.
No, but they do mention
It,
that.
it says it right there,
Yeah.
yeah, it's declined as a result of habitat loss. Yeah.
Right, but that's not the event.
But the
event,
gene flow,
we're not doing
the artificial selection doesn't cause
No,
that.
I'm with you, I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's-
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just think this is one of those questions where, did we give our kids enough experience with gene flow to understand?
I don't actually remember talking about it.
And then, next year we need to add, and next year we're gonna have to add to this, not just gene flow, but we're gonna do, genetic bottleneck, and then founder effect. So founder effect and genetic bottleneck will come into play next year. It's always been in the specificity, but we've never really kind of accepted my
Increase gene flow.
So this is a gene flow, the best answer is gene flow, and then Texas Puma introduction, and then increased genetic variation, correct?
I don't like this question.
I'm not a big fan, I'm not, I just. Now, there's one more question I wanna look at, because there's one on here that we haven't hit yet. Is there another one give me another most missed? 'Cause we're missing, which one?
25?
We're missing the evolution question, there's a evolution question that's just. Okay, well, yeah,
We haven't talked about.
we haven't covered this yet.
No.
Yeah, this
That makes sense why the business.
But I told my kids to think about, it's asking you about carbon, so think about carbon dioxide. Who takes it in, who breathes it out?
Yeah, you're very close to giving them the answer.
Yeah, you're very close, yeah, but we haven't covered the carbon cycle yet, so they don't, we haven't covered, and this is one of those, just fact that we didn't go over it yet.
Yeah.
We just haven't covered it. Okay.
No, 1.5 of them got it right, so.
Well, I think,
So your time's good.
like I said, we were, what I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna sit down, I put the two presentations together, I wanna combine them, and we'll talk to Dr. Fay. And I'm really gonna try to impress on Dr. Fay the fact that our benchmarks and our progress checks aren't really meeting our needs. The person who's putting them together is not a biology teacher, and I think if we're gonna do backward design, which is best strategy, we need to have teachers involved in creating the assessments. So my plan, I guess, for this afternoon, since we didn't get to it this morning, what I like to do this afternoon, kind of plan out day by day for ecology when we come back. And then I wanna take a look at, start a list, I wanna really list unit 1, unit 2, all the way to unit 9 and 10, or 11. And then start making a list of phenomena that we already use, or things that we might wanna add to it. Because I think, if we look at our data from our evolution unit, how good our kids do on evolution, I think if we approached all of our units with a phenomena at the beginning, you know, we start with cell phones, and I know that it doesn't sound like a big deal, but I think it gives the kids a grounding and it pulls kids into that unit. So I really want them to start thinking about those phenomena. And I don't want them to be the Sabbath phenomena, because most of those are terrible. We need to come up with our own phenomena and use those to help guide our instruction. And if we just had at least 2 for every unit, one at the beginning to capture their interest, and then one kind of in the middle of the unit to keep kind of pull it back in, I think we're gonna see some, I think kids are gonna benefit from that. So, we come back from lunch, we're gonna take a look at, we'll do our day by day for the unit 4, or unit 11, which is ecosystems, and then, talk about the phenomena, and then something that's been on the back of my mind is differentiation, next year, a little more differentiation between our honors classes and our regular classes.
And we need to go up.
We need to raise the bar. We need to raise the bar for our honors kids. They need to have some more responsibility.
And I think that's, because we do such a good job of getting them to the level, like that's why our scores are so high, so.
Right.
That last 4%, honestly, is probably just apathy.
It's just.
There's just gonna be kids, so if we
All right.
can.
I
get more
appreciate you
kids-
guys today. Thank you. Thank you for participating, and thank you for your input. Best PLC in the cast.
Got the scores.
I tell everybody. And we did 40.